So the real question is, how do you write an essay that impresses people who spend all day reading and writing history, especially when this is an essay topic, which can be approached in so many different ways and has almost like a standard argument that you could make for it. As we've seen, there's so much historiography based behind this as well. So we'll begin by looking at introductions. And this is something that you should bear in mind because people approach essay writing, of course, in many different ways. And an introduction is how you show these examiners that your approach is going to be interesting. It's just the same as writing an exam essay, but a little bit more advanced. So remember that these people are going to be reading so many different essays. I've heard that for the John Locke competition overall, there are about 19,000 different entries. And of course, not everyone is going to be writing an answer on this topic. But for this essay title alone, there are going to be quite a few people, writing an answer. And that doesn't mean that you need to do anything crazy, like write an extremely funny introduction or come up with something that no one else has ever looked at or touched upon before. But it does mean that your introduction is a chance to show the examiner that they should pay attention to what you're writing, that they can, wake up a little bit and see that what you're writing might be worth commending or ranking in the top places. So we'll go into more detail in the introduction when I show you the structure for the essay. But an introduction must address the central components of the question. And you need to set up the key components of your argument and explain how you've come up with working definitions that you've taken from the question title. And if you can, start with a quotation or have a catchy introduction or anecdote that begins your introduction. So in our very first video, we spent a lot of time almost deconstructing and breaking down the terms in a question. So we looked at concepts like sustained economic growth, the adjective rare, the temporal time frame that we're going to be using for the question, and also the change over time element, as well as the different areas of the world that you can look at. And because this question is so broad, you need to have good working definitions within the question for the question. So if someone says, it's almost as if you have to explain to a friend, what is sustained economic growth? You should be able to give them a one-sentence definition of sustained economic growth, which doesn't have to be perfect or completely inclusive of every single definition of economic growth that exists. So if you remember, there was quite a difference between how McKinsey might approach economic growth versus an economic historian of the Roman Empire. But it needs to be a definition that works for you and works for your argument. And actually, this is important and also quite fun because it means that you get to set the parameters of the question and prioritize what you think is important. So for you, if economic growth is a very fiscal and very quantifiable term, so you can set it in numbers, you could explain that. But also economic growth for some people, such as Pomeranz or some other historians that we looked at in our last video, economic growth is also measurable by living standards. So if you're more interested in the social cultural side of things, you can define economic growth as that. And start also looking for quotations or catchy introductions. If there's something that sticks out to you among the readings that you've done, then highlight it and perhaps think of a way to begin your question with that. And when we get to the final section of this video, where we look at previous entries, you should be able to see what I mean by that. And here, as you might have spotted already, I've put a picture of someone sleeping in a library because this is the exciting moment of writing the essay. And also this is really not what you want your examiners to be like when you're reading. They're reading the essay as well. So try not to be generic and try to be as unique as possible. I think essay competitions really want people to bring their own opinion and their own unique perspectives. It's very different to school where your teachers might expect you to write a certain answer because that's what the textbook said. there's no blueprint for this. So make sure it's reflective of your own authentic voice rather than trying to replicate something else that people have done before or that you think people should be writing.